Muchas gracias. Thank you so much, Raul. That was fantastic view. Thank you very much. Again, have a seat. I think you see the tools in action there. It's not a theory. Both those tools developed globally as well as the local solutions, and we'll talk more about those. And obviously a lot of exciting changes to come with the Neue Klasse production coming in, and plenty of challenges to work through as well. And as you said, you want to work with your providers as you implement those too. But thank you again, Raul. That was a great kickoff. As we now move into our panel, delivering through data, connecting the vehicle supply chain. And to kind of move us forward, I want to bring a couple of more experts to the stage to widen out the discussion, and please come with questions as well. I'd like to introduce, I think I lost the clicker here. There we are. I want to bring Jessica Babayana onto the stage. Jessica working in business development for ICL, deeply involved in vehicle logistics digitalization projects. So Jessica, please, you could be with us as well. Welcome. And also back from another representative from Glovis America, Sean spent a good chunk of his career beginning at Toyota, worked at his own startup, and is today head of vehicle logistics planning at Glovis. So pleased that Sean Moses could be with us. Sean, good to have you here.
Good to be here.
Thank you. Please have a seat. There we go. Okay, so I'd like to turn to Sean and Jessica. You know, you've just heard obviously from Raul, and we've been discussing plenty of challenges this morning as well. What are key projects and focus areas you're seeing in the industry, either at your company or with your clients, in terms of vehicle logistics digitalization, whether it's visibility, process automation, optimization? Sean, I'll start with you on that.
Yeah, definitely. I would say two key areas that we're looking at. First would be in the customer satisfaction side. So I'll point back to Darren and the previous panel. Visibility, right? And with that, I would say ETA is highest priority for customer satisfaction. For any new startup OEM, whether it's direct to consumer or a legacy wholesale, that's highest in that category. Second, I would say internal efficiency would be, and this is what I'm so impressed about Raul's presentation, is that it seems like these ideas he had, they really come from the floor rather than kind of a top-down to check an AI box. These seem like they were floor-generated, efficiency-minded. And so that's what we're looking for as well at Glovis, is to really find what's going to have an impact. And, you know, simple as reducing inputs into the computer, right? If you have our accounting team is entering the same information that our VL team is, right? That should never happen, right? It should be, you know, a single source and single data entry or data capture. And we think that'll create synergies for both buckets of priorities.
Mm-hmm. So I would echo for sure the process improvements internally. I think that's a big one in terms of really bringing efficiencies and allowing people to work on higher value things, right? There's really an opportunity to, I mean, you've mentioned so much in your presentation of just where are we going and what can you do with technology today. So it's very important that you're really moving quickly. And in order to be able to do that with the people that you have, it's freeing up their time to be able to do that. It's that knowledge that they bring, right? You can't bring somebody new necessarily and allow them to bring, you know, and do some of the things that you want. But it's listening to the customers at the same time and listening to what are the things that will bring the biggest value today, as opposed to trying to tackle everything at one time.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. And Sean mentioned how for Glovis, a lot of focus on ETA as one key metrics that you're really trying to push, also on the wholesale aspects of it. Jessica, when you look across your customers, what are some of the top outcomes they're looking for? I mean, clearly costs and reducing costs will for sure be a part of that, but what would you say are some of the most important outcomes and ways you see?
I'd say cost is a big one. Certainly reducing dwell time, so being able to identify those aging units, taking action on them, really allowing the people to be able to focus more on the exceptions, as opposed to having to take an overall look at the network every day and trying to find the problems, right?
Yeah.
Surfacing the problems quicker, allowing them to be able to, you know, really focus on them and move on to other things. So I would certainly say cost for sure, reducing transit time, reducing dwell time, all of those points.
Right. And Sean, you know, one of the things Raul really highlighted was the data the system and data architecture, right? So
Yeah.
that even the land bridge is made possible because of a harmonization of certain SAP tools. But particularly when you're getting into the AI areas, obviously you need a master data strategy, you need clean data. What are some of the solutions or ways you're working to achieve more robust data integration and that sort of single source of truth and sign-on you mentioned?
Yeah, no, single source of truth. My team's probably tired of me here talking about that. But I think every auto industry or every auto manufacturer was growing. New sites, new ports, more on-prem servers here. Everything is so fragmented, right? And so before you can really have an AI, right? AI only knows what AI knows, right? And so that term I think gets used a lot, maybe too much. And if you don't have the data set in one place, right? So moving towards more modern database with relationship style, a data architecture, then you can have all the AI projects you want, and you won't be ready for it. So that's a huge priority with Globus and Globus's IT team is to get ready for real agentic AI to really when it's kind of even more powerful than it is today. It was having good data that will feed any area of our business it should be able to adapt to.
Yeah. Does that align with what you focus with your customers as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so for us, our system is essentially that single source of truth, and all of that data, it's so important for it to be accurate and for you to actually be able to use it. Certainly, if you have any amount of data, but you can't trust it, anything that's going to be kicked out from it, you wouldn't do anything with it. It becomes kind of irrelevant. And then you're having to start over. And so really that's of course a focus point for sure. And working with all of the carriers and the OEMs and really making sure before you then even go to real time and making sure that they're able to accomplish just step one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Raul, you shared obviously a number of great use cases, whether it's the predicting supply chain ETA, the vehicle distribution planning, process mining, yard. Would you point to areas of where you had particularly complex data integration and needed to work hard to get that data consistency? And what's an example of ways that you and the team could manage that, or together with your IT team, what are ways you were able to do that?
Yeah, I mean, for us, it has been a learning curve since we started with this initiative of digital transformation. As mentioned by Jessica, the quality of the data.
Yeah.
Especially when you need to pull internal data from BMW and also external data for the different service providers. When you cannot trust on the source of that information and you try to use it for your different operations and systems, that's when you realize how challenging it is. As mentioned during my presentation, 1 month ago we went to the rollout of the latest version of SAP for us, the S/4HANA, and something we encountered that is how strict is this system. In the past, we were able to leverage some of the processes, for example, the EDI transmission, and even though we may have some errors on that transmission, on the data that was coming from service providers or from suppliers, we were able to process the shipment, for example. Nowadays, it's not possible anymore. And certainly the last 4 weeks had been quite a challenge for us because we have several disruptions where we were not able to identify the reason or the root cause why this source of information was not adequate to our process.
So the system demands that you're accurate and you
100%
create as much
accuracy
clean
on
data
the
as
quality
possible.
of the data
Yeah.
and also from the source that it's coming from.
Yeah.
So that has been quite an effort the last 4 weeks, I would say, and I think I will continue for a while until we are able to, I would say, re-educate our service provider and our suppliers on these data qualities.
Yeah. Sean, what would your advice be for those who may be fairly early in this journey and don't necessarily have clean data, and you want to kind of avoid inertia that doesn't do anything. I mean, where do you start? Are there tools that can help you, for example, to clean that data?
Yeah, I think keep it simple, right? I mean, if you really need to go back and reset your data, I would say stick to the basics, right? So obviously there's a lot more that we do, but at the end of the day, the three high topics were either shipping cars, storing cars, or adding value, right? to finished vehicle, right? Like at the end of the day, everything falls more or less into those buckets, right? So
Yeah.
I would say you need to track along that. And then the second part is you add to that is, and I'm actually going to touch on a saying that our Charles Franklin at Globus says, is that at the end of the day, our job is to sell cars, right? And so every data that you capture from your process, it should help the sales team sell that car, right? And so that, again, back to ETA, that's why, to track each of that, so that the dealer or the end consumer who's buying it from OEM can, meet that car at its place, you're at the service center to pick it up, or the dealer can start selling it before it's even there.
Yeah. When we think about, in particular, an example of ETA and then feeding this data into these AI projects, what level of visibility are you really pursuing? Starting with you here, Sean. I mean, do you see this real-time location aspect critical, or is it a sort of balance between just having clean data as opposed to absolute real-time data?
Anytime I could get real-time data, I'll take it if it's clean, right?
Yeah.
Definitely. But I would say I would start with like a milestone. Is a great place to start, and I think our industry has done well with that over the years. And I don't know a new car that doesn't have telematics in it now, right? And so if you're able to API into that, you can get real-time data, right? You've got to be careful with state of charge. You don't kill a battery, but more or less that data is out there. You have to be careful with data integrity, though, as obviously you deliver a car to a consumer, you got to stop tracking that car, right? That's key. So I would say the milestone is a great place to start, but for inventory reconciliation, that's when I would flip the switch of let's give me that telematics data, reconcile the inventory, and then last mile, especially that telematics data is key, I would say, for improving ETA.
Yeah. Do you see that similar, Jessica, or?
Yeah, so I would say they both have a good intent, right? And depending on the user, depends on the use of that. Real-time data is great, but then at the same time, if it's not going to be used, it doesn't make sense. There's no reason to get to that level if it's not going to be used properly. That data is great for being able to make quick decisions, right? Whereas, more of the milestones is good maybe when a vehicle is further out from delivery. And being able to see things as the progression is happening, maybe for slower transit modes and things like that. But obviously for a truck, things are happening very quickly. So being able to see that for sure. And going back to your earlier question, just in terms of somebody new into all of this, what they would do is really, I think, higher value, as you said, doing things that will bring somebody value for sure, as opposed to trying to tackle everything. Because, back to your presentation, there are a lot of possibilities out there, and technology enables that. But really focusing on those things, excel in those areas before you just try to, broad approach, for sure. But then also making sure that the humans trust it. Change management is a very big part of all of this, for sure. And so really making sure that the people that you want to use it actually trust what the output is. Because it's also only as good as what they give it. Yeah. And if they're hesitating at all, they're going to give it less, which is then going to impact the outcome of it.
Yeah, no, that's an important point. Well, BMW was fairly early to, I think, use aspects of its telematics in vehicles related to vehicle tracking. What role is that playing, or is that playing a role, or other kind of real-time location tracking in your planning tools and in how you control the network?
Yeah, certainly. And as mentioned before, with the new architecture of vehicles, which allows to have or to broaden more the connectivity, I think this will give us a lot of opportunities. Nowadays, I cannot, expose a lot what we're doing in Mexico, because actually we're using the early phase of that.
Right.
But certainly what we saw in the video in our German plants, they're now enhancing that. And certainly that will be an opportunity that we will need to explore certainly here in North America as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And because you mentioned, a control tower oversight in Mexico. So, what are some of the key ways that you're feeding information into that control tower now?
Well, certainly all the information is coming from our partners, no?
Yeah.
GPS information, geofencing, EDI information as well. What is the situation of the ports at different locations? One of our main, I would say, usages right now in the last few months was to get to know if a new blockage will happen in some of the highways in Mexico in order to be able to react and deviate some of our shipments to be able to achieve the target, no? So basically, this is information, real-time information that help us to make decisions, but certainly we are also capturing all this information as historical data that will allow us to predict in case similar situations are arising in our operation.
Absolutely. Obviously at this event and elsewhere, we're talking a lot about AI opportunities, but should we maybe sometimes take a step back? I mean, Raul showed in his presentation where Gen AI is going to be used in some aspects. Jessica, when you're working in your tool right now, is it largely focused on machine learning, optimization? Are you already integrating Gen AI? How do you see this breaking down in real use case in the vehicle logistics supply chain?
Yeah, I'd say dabbling in a little bit of everything, to be honest. So even just from our own internal folks and being able to rely on these tools to help them do their job, right, from a development perspective, really iterating through that process and really making sure that the output is aligned with requirements still and all of that, which is very important. It can produce something, but it may not align back to what's actually being asked of them. But then also getting into more agentic AI and being able to take action, really, and find the problems and before it becomes a problem, really. So I would say a little bit of everything. Optimization as well, from either optimal truckloads and building that, also more from a predictive perspective and you touched on it a little bit, Raul, but also, we're focused in terms of capacity planning and forecasting and being able to see where those shortfalls are within the network. So it's not costing you once it is actually a bottleneck in the process.
Yeah, that's great. And Sean, what about for you and your team? I mean, you also highlighted potential for agentic AI. Are you more focused on optimization areas right now? Are you starting to use Gen AI chat boxes in how you frame your data, for example?
Yeah, we have a ETA. We have an AI chatbot with our ETA for several of our customers right now. But looking forward, I think the next steps will probably be more efficiency targeted. I've always had an eye on the claims process personally for agentic AI. I think anything where you can give a clear target and parameters with data to support, you have exponential opportunity for AI. And so I think, though, on that topic, a lot of people, when they hear that, they think that it's coming for their job.
Right.
And, I think you have to be candid and say, 20 years from now, I don't know what it's going to look like. But today, just making every team member more powerful is really the next step, right? And that's the first step in this. And so we'll definitely have some efficiency-pointed agentic solutions in the future.
Yeah. And hopefully when it's, as you alluded to, Jessica, automating a process which is preventing somebody from adding value, so maybe chasing through 6 different spreadsheets and systems just to locate the information to share it. If that's what your job is based on, then maybe that's a problem, but hopefully that it won't be based on that once you have the opportunity to use these tools.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, trust is a big one. I think anytime you're trying to convince somebody to use something different, they have to understand why. Otherwise, they're like, are you sure? Are you trying to, eliminate me and my role? Like, as you mentioned, that's the concern that a lot of people, so then they restrict back the context of what they give, for example, which all of this really relies on how much information you're willing to disclose in order to make it as powerful as it's intended to be.
Yeah, definitely. Raul, you described BMW's AI journey as being in the analysis plan and optimization stage. You want to move towards more autonomous development, I'm sure more agentic. What do you see as the next key steps to move forward? Is it with the teams more? Is it for the data integrations? What are some of the important steps that will move more to autonomous decision making in these tools?
I would say is the accountability.
Accountability.
Yes. We have been we required to set up a lot of limitations on the ability to exchange data. No? There are very strict policies on what we can share and what cannot, similar to our partners. So we still foresee that the necessity of a human being to make the last decision, we may not be in that level of automatization that we're looking for. So as long as we have not been able to leverage all these restrictions in the most adequate way to protect, let's say, both sides of the partnership, I think we will not be able to achieve that. But certainly we are pushing forward to make that happen, because at the end that's the aim, especially on AI, to be full automatic, that we do not have any involvement on how the recommendation will be driven, the last step of the operation or the implementation.
Yeah. I mean, when you, I think, you want to be able to see some of this automated. On the other hand, there is such high degrees of volatility. You need someone maybe to give it a sense check. I mean, Sean, for example, so do you see that human in the loop aspect as really key, or something that will evolve further over time?
Yeah, it definitely starts with human in the loop. That's definitely, I don't see a way of getting out of that right now. But who knows, I mean, they don't sell the iPods anymore, right? Remember when those were everywhere, right? So you never know what happens with technology. So I think, but definitely to start human in the loop. And we kind of went through the data visualization change, right? I mean, it used to be Excel was everything, right? And then now we have Power BI, Tableau, there's many other just standard data visualization tools. And I think now we're getting to not just why, or excuse me, not just this, maybe this rail ramp, our inventory is above, right? The agentic portion will come and ask the question why, right? And help the human in the loop ask that question, right? But at the end of the day, I still might need to call my carrier, right? And I haven't met the chatbot. I mean, they're pretty good, but I haven't met a chatbot yet that can have a phone call that, is going to get what I need, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Another key element of any agentic flow, along with data accuracy, quality, is security as well. I mean, there's a lot of sensitive systems, sensitive information. Jessica, how are you working with or advising your clients to balance that need for the most open integrated data, but with these cyber and other security issues?
Yeah, I mean, it's really making sure that you have a solid infrastructure in place. I think at the end of the day, it's humans interacting with this, right? And you really can't trust what a human will do, okay? So you have to make sure that there's guardrails in place. Otherwise, you can navigate your way into places that maybe wasn't intended to be. So really security for sure, from just a secure process in place to exchange that data, making sure that you have the right roles and the right level of access in place. But also that goes into what are you willing to share based on just a chat that somebody is having, and really putting that authentication in place to make sure that it's real. Like that makes sense to share that.
And Raul, has this been a key focus of BMW as well, as you give these tools access to different pools of data and information in your supply chain?
Yeah. I mean, with the cloud environment, certainly everybody has access to a lot of information. So we have to set a very strict policies on who has access to what. And with the usage of this information, how we can streamline in which processes can we allocate this kind of information. So it's still a challenge, especially when we need to change the mindset of the people. This is not an IT topic. This is an organizational and operational topic, and everybody has to be responsible on the data they have access to, how to use it.
Yeah, that's a great point. And Sean, we talked about this a bit earlier. Glovis, obviously you have the data and pools of information on wholesales between your Hyundai Group customers, but then also external customers. On the one hand, there's a powerful set of data here, but you have to also protect it as well. So how do you think about that when you look at these opportunities? How do you draw the lines of security as well as getting the optimization?
Yeah, that's always a key topic, especially when we bring those kind of external OEMs into our customer pool. But we're very certain of keeping data separate, right? On one end, we have our Hyundai Motor Group that wholesaled last year, 1.8 million. And so there's a lot of data with that, right? We learn a lot of machine learning with ETA and stuff like that. So right at this time, I'd say that data really helps with the North American knowledge of vehicle flow, right? And so, if we have a customer that's looking for, a rail solution, we understand the rail solution. We have very good data on rail transit times, right? And so that's something that, we know, and, we can kind of add that to our solution, right? But in terms of vehicle specific data, we have to obviously keep those data tables separate, right? Yeah. So that's key.
That's important. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We're getting a bit closer to lunch. Maybe just a few more questions. If there's an audience question or comment, then we have one from Srini right in the front. If I can have a microphone, it's on its way. Right here in the front, Ellie. Gentlemen.
Hi, this is Srini. This is a question for Raul. This is about the load planning function itself. We've been working in this optimization space for 30 years, and inbound problem is that's where we are experts at. We struggled a lot with load planning stuff because it's the most complex piece of thing which cannot be represented properly with math. We struggled a lot. We experimented with, and BMW somehow picked that problem to solve when other OEMs are just using drivers' knowledge and whatnot, and they kind of do the load planning themselves. So you just release the cars, they basically load it, and whatever way they take it to the dealers. What is the kind of, why is BMW after load planning by themselves? That's my question. And then second thing is how, I'm sure the math is not really solving the problem here. AI is one of the possibilities of solving the problem in certain ways. That's what we figured out finally, based on the historical data, how you can load the truck. Based on how each units can go in what ways in combinations, we can figure out that. But pure math cannot cut it. We kind of figured out that after reading 50, 60 papers, including your paper with a university, Duisburg or somewhere. Yeah. What is the driver behind you doing it?
Okay, that's a very interesting question. Certainly, yes, we cannot trust on everything, especially on math. So especially in my case, where my background is more on inbound, I realized that there are some benefits from the inbound, let's say, processes and challenges that we can overtake to the outbound operation. And actually with me is Jochen Schneider, the expert on program planning, that he has been able to teach us exactly how we can link both processes. So I would say different, I don't know exactly what OEMs are doing right now, but in our case, what we try to do is to benefit from all the learnings we have from the inbound operations, going, I would say, crosses to the program planning, and then afterwards have a more resilient way on managing outbound. And that's why I show in my presentation has to be an end-to-end process in the whole logistic chain.
Yeah, thank you. Raul, I wanted to touch on your the land bridge solution that you're going to bring or planning to implement from Mexico to the US, to the different inland ports and ports, as you mentioned. How much more complexity, or let's say data and visibility complexity, does this switch mean? Or does it mean more complexity? Because you mentioned that you needed to harmonize systems to enable that flow to take place on the tax side, on the compliance side, etc.
Exactly. I would say it's a lot of complexity, especially starting from the situation that we will have more logistical events to track.
Yeah.
On the sea freight process, basically, you bring the car to the yard, put it on the vessel, and then waiting a few days until it arrives into the final BDZ. In our case, when I mentioned that even though the idea came up 2 years ago, we were not able to have the proper setup and platforms in order to trigger this project. For example, with the rollout of SAP, we did not have all the resources, let's say system-wide, in order to control the different items. Because it was not only the rollout of SAP itself, we have to link the other systems, for example, finance, tax, customs. So until we have that platform, we were able to enhance this project. So I would say what we are looking for is how to link all these different logistical events to the platform that we are expecting to make in order to be I would say, profitable on the flexibility that we are looking for at the moment.
Yeah, no, that's great. Maybe last question before we go to lunch, and you've touched on this, Jessica, you touched on this a little bit as well. You need the people using these tools to trust them, to gain value, be able to enhance their jobs. What are key steps we can take to overcome resistance, barriers that may come from mindsets or people's unwillingness or lack of trust in these sort of tools? What is some advice you would give to our audience in parting?
Honestly, I would say educate them. So they don't know what they don't know. So they need to also be a part of the process. So if they're educated on the tools, educated on the value that it will bring, then they'll trust it, and then they'll use it. And so really it's an evolution, right? Give them the knowledge, and then convince them, and then adoption will happen from there.
Yeah, that's a great point. Think you'd add to that, Sean?
Yeah, I would say kind of engage on the problem, right? And so I would go to your claims team, go to your VL team, whoever it is that is going to use this tool, and say, none of us are perfect, right? Look at this as another tool, right? Tell me you've never had an aged claim. Tell me you've never had an aged car at a port. Happens to everybody, right? And so this is another tool to fix that, right? So just like Excel, just like every other tool we've used along the way, this needs to be just like as another tool right now.
Yeah. And Raul, you mentioned you have a young team, average age 30. It seems there's a lot of engagement here, but I'm sure, are there areas you still have to work through to obviously upskill, but also manage resistance or barriers to adaptation?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we are coming from a heritage of our colleagues in Germany. We have experience of 40 years doing the same job on a daily basis, and they don't want to change. And then you have a Mexican young engineer willing to teach him how to use AI in order to improve the processes. So it has been very, very interesting exchange between, let's say, two worlds. But nowadays what we are doing is, first of all, as mentioned before several times, what kind of data do we have, how we want to use that data. And before going into very high level of, I would say, innovation or digital transformation, such as predictability, for example, what we encourage first is to have transparency on the information you have. And that will be the first step before going into much higher approaches on this digital transformation.
Absolutely. Great points. I want to thank all of you for your time. Raul, for your presentation and examples you shared. Jessica and Sean for your insights here. Thank you very much. It's a long journey ahead, but and thanks to everyone.